Hello, everyone. How are you doing? This is Dr. Will, and welcome to another Dr. Will show. Now, today we're going to be talking about getting your grad school on. And I have a special guest with me today, Trina Tan. How are you doing, Trina?
I'm great. How are you, Dr. Will?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. Now, this show came about because I was on YouTube, and I was kind of doing some searches about doctoral programs, certain things, and Trina happened a hangout that she facilitated with uh, you say Asian Pacific Islanders. Is that the correct way to say it?
Yeah, I would say Asian American, Pacific
Oh,
Islander women. Yep.
okay, excellent. Thank you, thank you. And she facilitated a conversation about their experiences in doctoral programs, etc. And I said, "Wow, this is amazing." Trina was fantastic as a moderator. It was a great show, and I'm going to put a link to it on my blog, so I want everyone to check it out. But what from there, I said, okay, I got to get Trina on the Dr. Will show, and she has graciously accepted. So now we're going to kind of get into this with getting your grad school on. Uh, so for those who are interested in going to grad school, check out the show. So Trina, you graduate from high school. You go to college. Uh, you get out of college, and it's like, okay, what's next? And grad school kind of pops into your mind. So, what is your thought process from there?
Well, just to give you a little bit of background, I'm from Southern California, so I went to undergrad and high school in California, and I was a big student leader at Cal State Fullerton, which is where I got my Bachelor's of Arts in English. And I was definitely kind of nurtured into the idea of going to grad school, especially when folks realized I wanted to go into student affairs and higher ed. And because the field is so small, you really, once you find out someone wants to go into student affairs, it's kind of like, Larry, let me help you out. Especially at my institution, which was very, very, I'm really grateful for. But I would definitely say right after I graduated from my undergrad, I definitely did apply to graduate programs, a few both in-state and out-of-state. And in my thought process, I kind of felt rushed, and I felt like there was a lot of pressure to have a sexy, juicy story after you graduated from your undergrad. So where are you going next? Like, are you going to work? Are you going to go to grad school? What are you going to do? And I definitely felt a lot of that pressure to have a sexy story after graduation. And the reality was, I'm very instinctual. I'm really a big believer in trusting my gut. And I realized that my gut was telling me it was not the right time yet to go to grad school, and yet I had already applied. I had gotten all these letters of recommendation. I had flown out to do interviews, and March came along, and I had my fair share of rejections and acceptances on the table, and I realized that it just wasn't the right time yet, and I decided to decline and defer the acceptances that I did have, and it turned out to be the best decision I made for myself, absolutely. And I did some internships with USC and other smaller colleges in California, and eventually went into grassroots organizing and started volunteering and did kind of a self-audit and self-evaluation of, like, what is it that I really want, and checking in with my spirit, and seeing what do I really need to do here, and then having a little bit of just taking care of myself and allowing myself to have the time to make the decision that I felt was right for me, and then I applied again to graduate school. I mean, there are so many things that happened in between that year when I didn't go that I never would have thought happened. For example, my mom got really, really sick during that time. There's no way I would have been able to predict that would have happened, but I was able to be there when that happened and take care of her, as well as I volunteered for President Obama's campaign, and volunteering quickly turned into a full-time staff position. So I never would have had the time to do that had I been in graduate school. So I was a full-time staff member for President Obama's re-election campaign and helped out with the inaugural day of service. So definitely, I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. So, I think it's very, very individual for folks if they decide to go into graduate school. So it was the right choice for me to wait, even though I had invested that first time around.
Awesome, awesome. Now, folks, you never know we were going to have a Oprah Super Soul Monday, did you? Tina took us back to my spirits. What was right?
Let me take you to the spirit.
Took us there. Took us there. Now, Dr. Will doesn't have a book club yet, but I'm working on it. All right, working on it. Now, so when so being that you are in the whole spirit right fit thing for me, and this is what I tell people when it comes to college, because I even wrote a piece for this gifted program for kids who are considering, even undergrad, and I told them, don't get caught up in fancy names and quote unquote pedigrees of schools. You have to check out, is this environment great for me? What are the degree programs, the professors? How will this impact my experience and get me to where, I want to be? So in bringing that same process to the graduate program investigation, I guess, what did you do when you started looking at graduate schools? What sort of was your criteria for the different schools you applied for?
Sure, that's a really, really excellent question. The first time I applied to grad school, I wanted my sexy story. And I only applied to big cities, so like Chicago, San Francisco. And I definitely wanted to be somewhere where at the time, I knew I wanted to be in a city where I had like my other people of color and there's diversity and I would be able to go to food trucks in the middle of the night kind of thing. So that was at the time something that was very, very high on my list. But the second time around, after I had done, a little bit of time really discerning what I wanted out of my career and graduate school experience, I realized what I was looking for was a challenge. So I'm here now at the University of Vermont in my master's program. Keep in mind, I am a California girl all the way, California girl. And I went as far as I possibly could.
Oh, yeah, other side of the country, basically.
Really, really, I really, truly did. And I think something that was huge for me when I was applying to grad school both times was I come from a lower socioeconomic status background with a lower income family growing up, immigrant family from the Philippines, and I worked all the way through my undergrad. I did community college at the same time, and having the funding was a huge piece to me being able to go to graduate school. So I only applied to graduate school programs that would provide me the financial package that fit me, because when folks talk about graduate school fit, my fit meant you fully funded me, and I will go where that is, because one of my strengths I felt was that I was able to be adaptable. I'm able to take on challenges and go into really unfamiliar environments. So, recognizing that within myself, I knew that having a really good financial package was pivotal for me, especially considering my socioeconomic status background. So I only applied to programs that would essentially give me a living stipend. So within student affairs and higher ed specifically, I'm working to get a degree to work again in colleges. So I felt that I felt it was really important for me to be able to go to programs that supported that and recognize that at the end of this, I may not be a millionaire as an educator. So what can I do to make sure I'm taking care of myself financially in the process? So I only applied to schools that would fully fund me and give me at least a living stipend. And University of Vermont was able to do that for me. At the same time, Vermont is also the second whitest state in the nation, and I identify as Asian American Pacific Islander, so I'm a woman of color. So that was definitely a huge factor in me deciding, can I do this? Am I going to be able to find the affinity that I need and the support that I need as someone who is an only, or someone who's potentially one of the only ones in the office or the only one in my cohort program? So recognizing that I knew I had to be able to get that confirmed, and once I had it confirmed and I did the research of knowing that I would have folks to hang out with and go to lunch with and be able to kind of vent with, that was a big factor for me to say yes to Vermont. I would say the third thing that really stands out for me when you ask that question is the cohort model. So I know a lot of graduate school programs either have a cohort model where you have a specific, like a group of people. I think it can range from like 8 to 50 folks at a time who go through the graduate program together, or you do it more non-cohort style where folks are not in a group, and anyone, folks can come in at different times into the program. And I realized for me it was really important, if I was going to go across the country into a state that probably doesn't have folks that look like me a whole lot, I'm going to need a setup where a cohort dynamic is there to have like kind of a built-in support system. And that was really important for me. I think had I gone to a city, had I stayed in California, the cohort probably wouldn't have been as important to me. Maybe. But I could see how it's important for folks to be able to have kind of that built-in group support system in the program already.
And let me add to that. My doctoral program was actually a cohort as well, and there were 16 of us. And what made it fantastic was all of us were working professionals, but from different educational backgrounds with different experiences, and we were able to work together, learn together, support each other, and help each other. And especially when you in the dissertation phase, that's when people start to sort of split off in terms of, first of all, it's a lonely process because you're by yourself. There's no classes, and then some of your members of your cohort will not progress as quickly as others. And so I had about three, two that I know of who sort of were ahead of me to go, oh, let me see how you set up this chapter, or I can do this. So it was just a great experience to learn and grow with people. So it made the experience a welcoming, experience. I didn't feel like, let's say an undergrad, for example, where I'm going to take 338, whatever, in the spring, and I may at a certain time when I become a senior, because I'm really in my major, I may get to a point to where you may have an inadvertently sort of cohort because everyone's in the same major or whatever. But it just really is like you're just taking a bunch of classes, but here it's really that sort of coming together. So that was fantastic. So you found a cohort. The money made sense for you. Very awesome. You arrive in Vermont. You're looking around, seeing all the greenage and and all of that stuff, and a cold, which is nothing like California.
Correct.
So the semester starts. You're in school. What were your experiences like when you first started grad school, that first semester? And did you come across any challenges that made you sort of doubt the decision you made to go to University of Vermont?
Oh, absolutely. I probably checked in with myself every 2 weeks, like, oh Lord, what did I do? I would say that first semester was I'm ending my first year, And of the 2 semesters that I've completed, that first semester was so hard. And I would definitely attribute the transition phase to that. There's actually, I learned in my graduate program a transition theory. And, folks talk about, the different stages. And I was definitely in those stages of, like, I love it here and it's a honeymoon period. And then very quickly it was a realization of, recognizing so many things within myself and within my environment, and what's me and what's my environment when it comes to like issues that were rising up. One really big thing that stands out for me in terms of like the struggle was coming in. I was actually the only person who was Asian American Pacific Islander in my cohort, and I didn't realize that. Coming in, because you don't know who's accepted to the program, right? Like that's not part of my process. So you kind of find out when you get there, or if you connect on Facebook already, then like you may have a hint if folks, what your cohort or what the program might look like. But that was definitely I didn't expect that to be as hard as it was for me to realize that I was the only one. And I had to be really intentional about seeking out support, not just within my cohort, but also with the staff and the faculty, and finding community outside of my program. So one thing that I'll say that really helped me get through that first semester of the program, when folks are in this, like, it's kind of like a vortex when you're in a grad program, at least in my experience. It could be like that. It's all you're doing, and I am only in grad school, and I don't do anything but do this program. And keep in mind, I was also a graduate assistant working in admissions and enrollment management. So I have a dual thing. I'm a full-time grad student and also a graduate assistant. And with my program specifically, we also have a 9-hour internship that they just kind of added on there within another department. I was at the Dean of Students office at the time. I would say the biggest thing that helped me was finding community outside of all of that. So it was extremely important for me to have friends and have folks that I could hang out with who had no idea what my program was. No one at the University of Vermont. Really find community outside of my academic environment. So that was a really, really healing thing for me, to be able to kind of get out of my bubble within the program and then find community outside. I would say, although the cohort dynamic is, amazing, it has a potential to be, the best support system for folks who are going into a graduate program. I think for me as a returner to the academy, that there can be a perception or an expectation that the course is supposed to be best buddies and you're supposed to be all best friends and reveal your biggest secrets to each other the moment you meet because you're in this together. And that wasn't necessarily my experience. I'm someone who more so picks a handful of folks that I trust. It takes a really long time for me to build that relationship, and that's just my personality. That's the way that I am. And within my cohort, I would definitely say that there's a handful of folks that over time, over this past year, who I've gotten to really trust and get really close to. But I would definitely say, that pressure sometimes to be best friends with everybody can happen in a graduate program. And what I would say is, if that happens, trust your instinct to know that, that doesn't have to be the case, that you're best friends with everyone in your cohort, because, it's so important to find other communities, especially if you're one of an only. So it's really important for me to find other women who are Asian American Pacific Islander on campus, and who are maybe staff members, and be able to have lunch with them and, not have to code switch all the time. I think especially for folks of color, you talk a different way when you're with people who you feel more comfortable with, or it feels like home, than the way you would talk with folks who you don't identify with. So it was nice to be able to have some of that relief of code switching, talking really academically and in the classroom having to prove myself, and all that happens in the first semester. And then being able to go into another environment where I could just talk and, not have to be all academic and talk theory and not even think about student affairs, and be able to think about other things. And find kind of like mental relief that way. So, yeah, that first semester was really rough,
You were like, whew.
Whoo! Yeah, when I think of that first semester, I'm like, whoo!
See, again, y'all, it's all about that spirit. She's bringing it today. Uh, let's get into the coursework of it all
Yeah.
because people who I tell people in general, grad school overall, I will tell people, is it difficult if your writing game is tight and you're able to dedicate yourself to the reading? Because if you thought undergrad was some reading, grad school is a whole nother level of that reading, and then you're writing APA style. You know, you really have to step up your game and be very skilled at it. So when what was your transition sort of like going from undergrad to grad school with the greater uh, workload in the classroom and particularly because earlier you talked about the code switching thing, and there is an actual sort of I would say code switching between undergrad writing and uh, graduate writing because now you know it's not Trina Tan says something, it's uh, minority students will excel when they have certain support, parenthesis Johnson, comma 2013. So it's a so it's a it's just a different way of communication, writing, etc. So what was that like for you to get into that world at that point?
Sure. Just to give some background, my undergraduate degree was in English literature,
Oh, you were
and
prepared. You were prepared.
you'd be surprised, we did MLA. And I was so mad when I, I did MLA all through undergrad, and APA was this program was the first time I had experienced APA anything. Um, so doing the program as a master's student and having to learn really this whole new language of learning how to write and cite everything, that was definitely difficult. And I would definitely add that on as being a return to the academy of like, I haven't done this in a while, so what do I need to do to be able to prepare myself for the workload of reading again? Because I think within the program there's so many different folks that come in with different experience levels of like experience of research, and I had never done any like real research experience. Most of my background was in looking at existing English literature like poetry. So that was definitely a huge transition for me in terms of what I could bring to the table. One thing I did was I definitely started making trips to the library where we have a writing center, and that was something I had never done before. It was very, very humbling of recognizing that what are my limitations and what are the resources that I need. Especially as an educator, kind of like putting that on myself. Like, what would I tell my students if
Hmm.
this was something that they were struggling with? I would tell them to check out the resources. So I had to kind of turn that toward myself and recognize that like I need resources, and I need to be okay with finding them and utilizing them. And I will admit that I turned in papers that were not good. And I'm so grateful that my program focuses so much on the process and the learning that like I've had a few papers I've had to rewrite because my professors found that I need you to rewrite this, and these are the things I want you to focus on. I'm going to have to dock off a few points, and I think that's just part of the learning process
Hmm.
within the grad program. I've never been a straight A student. That's never been my identity. So I definitely struggle a lot in the classroom, a traditional classroom, and that's always been the case for me ever since like kindergarten. So going into the program, recognizing that within myself, um, more and more as part, I think it was important for me to express to my professors that I have more of an artistic, more creative, less hegemonic way of learning. So being able to express that and have a relationship with my professors and say that to them, they were a little bit more open to my style of learning where I, like in my lit review, I might want to put a little bit of poetry in there because that's part of my learning and that's part of like, something I bring to the table that's different. So having that kind of mutual understanding of how can I take ownership of my learning, where I'm not just writing for my professor to get the grade, because that doesn't feel good. I don't want to just write to get the grade and then feel like that wasn't me in that paper. There's a reason why I'm in this program, and I want to be able to own my education. And I'm giving up 2 years of my life to this program. I better be feeling like this is me, and this is my degree, and this is my paper. Everything about this paper says Trina, and it's my style. At the same time, recognizing what my limitations are and what I still need to learn. So I think, recognizing I had to go to the library and learn all these kind of mechanical things, but still honoring what is my style, what is my voice, what is the issue that I want to write about, and not having that get swept away by the pressure to make the grade. And I would say, like, I'm still there, like, I'm still in the program, I'm not failing. I'm still making grades, and I'm so grateful that I've had a program that supports that. So I think but I knew that coming in. So I would say, again, that's something to know coming in, like, what do your professors expect from you, and have that question even before you accept.
Okay. Fantastic. See, I'm learning so much about you. This is just absolutely fantastic for me, and I hope that the people who will watch this will be like, this is awesome too. They're getting information and stories and everything. This is flowing quite nicely. So let me get to you mentioned the internship, and what I think is so critical, particularly in today's economy, is that undergrad as well, but at grad school level, people do internships to where not only can they learn real job skills and understand what the job market is like, especially in their field, but are able to build relationships with people who can say, hey, by the way, we're hiring for this position, blah, 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 or I know this university or this company is hiring, I can put in a word for you, or this is how you will approach your application, interview, etc. You're doing your internship in grad school. You've already mentioned that you want to work in student affairs. From your experience, your opinion, how critical is the internship component to a graduate school education, and what have you taken out of that experience that you think will be of benefit to you after you graduate?
That's a great question. I want to disclose also that my program is not a research-based program. Mine's an administrative program. So I have my degree is going to be in higher education, student affairs administration. So I think that question could be very, very different for folks who want to go the PhD route and want to teach eventually as a professor and do more research. So I say this as someone who's an administration program. The internship program or the internship component is so important and so pivotal. I think when you have the scholarly piece of it without the practical, that's detrimental. I think, like, it's been so important for me to see in real life how some of these theories play out, and how some of them play out so differently from what the theory says, because that can be so misleading to kind of do just the scholarly part and the academic piece, and then have your first job be the first time you see it play out, and it's like, wow. First of all, politics. First of all, that could play a huge role in how the theory might play out or not play out. So I would definitely say the internship piece has been so important. My graduate program is dual, where you have the full-time enrollment as a student and also the 20 hours a week as a graduate assistant. So my graduate assistantship is in admissions and enrollment management. So that has been so important for me to see the way that folks are getting admitted. What does retention look like? What's the enrollment class criteria and things like that. And on top of that, I also have an internship 9 hours a week that changes per semester. And that has been really, really awesome, and I think it's pretty unique to UVM's program. I'm not sure if any other programs do it. I'm sure that a handful do, but I don't think that's a requirement or thing that's common. But I would definitely say the internship piece has been so important of seeing what the academic looks like in real life. So my internships include Georgetown University's ResLife internship program before I came to Vermont. I did a Dean of Students experience. And this past semester, I was at the Alana Student Center, which is basically a multicultural center for students of color here. Mm-hmm. And my upcoming semester internship is with the City of Burlington Mayor's Office, because I really wanted to see what how the education platform kind of plays out more citywide and looking at it from a broader perspective of the community. So I would definitely say when I have conversations with folks, it's been so important to be like, I've seen that, or tie theory to practice in that way, because I was definitely someone who, before this program, I would say, oh, you don't need theory. You need to just have the experience, and you'll know, I think it's obvious. I'm a gut person. I'm very practical when it comes to the way that I work, and I'm like, oh, you'll just, you'll have a one-on-one relationship and you'll just know, or you don't need theory to affirm what you already know. But something that's been really changing for me in this program is what? These theories are actually really important, and they are affirming so many things that I didn't know needed affirming. Mm-hmm. And kind of having the balance of the two has been so important for me as a future student affairs practitioner. It's mm-hmm. going to be a different narrative for folks who want to do research, though. Totally different in terms of folks who want to do PhD programs, because I don't want to speak on that experience because that's not my path. So mm-hmm. I imagine it's very different for folks who are doing the PhD route.
It depends, but I will tell people, get your doctorate and run. Don't you dare go to academia and get pimped out, because that's what's going to happen. Now, very few people will graduate, do graduate assistantships, and then the university will say, come on in, and then they start working their ways towards tenure. A lot of people are going to get pushed into that adjunct situation where they're going to be teaching 6 classes, maybe at 3 different universities, just to make $25,000. And I'm like, at that point, you're getting pimped. And so I say get the doctor and run, because the last time I checked, they called me doctor just like they called the tenure professor doctor. And in that case, I want to get paid. And so get it, roll out, because I know I'm not going to academia, not even for adjunct teaching, because I'm making good money doing what I'm doing right now, and I'm unless it's a situation I got to eat because we need income, I got fired or something, that's it. Get the doc and roll out, because you don't want to get put on a stroll for teaching. So
I want to be touching base with you, Dr. Will, when it's my turn to start thinking about it.
But see, yours a different case with student affairs, because in student affairs, it is a practice-based field. And though you may have people who let's say the director of admissions, or at some universities might be vice president of such and such, but you oversee admissions and enrollment management, etc. And you may teach a couple of classes on campus, but your primary job is to run the department, or run the area of in the hierarchy of the campus of where you hired. So for there, I think that's cool to be able to sort of give back and get you a little extra cheddar for that vacation you might want to go. I think that's cool. But keep in mind that full-time gig is what's going to sort of fuel your passion and fuel your pockets. You know what I'm saying? So for you going into student affairs, a doctor to me is a fantastic option and the best route to go, particularly when, as much as I hear you talk about you love getting in the grind, you love the people, you love uplifting people, you love all of that. I want to see people like you personally in leadership positions to affect policy. because as much as you may affect individual lives, and look, from talking to you, I'm inspired. You make me want to go back to school. Okay, I'm inspired. But when you are in those positions where you can affect real change, then you can bring up more Trinas because you can put in different programs that recruit more students of color. You can put in more academic programs that are more culturally responsive to different learners. So for you, I say definitely, get your doctorate.
Thank you, Dr. Will. I appreciate that. Very humbling.
You're welcome. No, you have the skills. You have the skills. So before we get out of here, because we've mentioned some great things, fantastic. I want to get to the job piece and student affairs. Now, I'm going to have people who will watch this and who will not be in student affairs, but hopefully it'll be able to apply to their situation. You'll be graduating in a while. I know you have your eyes on the prize in terms of where you want to be, right? So, have you decided which area of student affairs you will work in? Because for those who don't know, student affairs is a very vast field with different universities treating it differently, with different departments, etc. So have you gone through the process of saying admissions is my thing, enrollment management is my thing, leadership development is my thing, student activities is my thing, etc.? Have you gone through that process? And if so, how are you sort of discerning where your job opportunities will come from after graduation?
That's a great question. I have been thinking about it all semester. Mostly because the second year cohort, the folks who are graduating actually today, they're graduating this afternoon, they devoted a lot of this past semester to their job search. So I, as someone who's concurrently in the program, I've been kind of watching what their process kind of looks like as an outsider. And I would definitely say, like, I've definitely thought about it. And more I'm realizing that there's a handful of departments I might like to work in, but I think what it comes down to when I think of my list of things I want in a job, it's not necessarily the position I'm looking for. It's not necessarily the department. I'm looking for what student population do I want to work with, and am I going to be able to find that population in other departments? And the answer is yes. So a population I really love to work with is, first generation low income students, because that's how I've identified, and that's been a really important population for me to work with. I love working with underrepresented folks like folks of color, returners to the academy, transfer students, that kind of population. So I know that those populations of students are going to be in so many different departments depending on the institution. Mm-hmm. So I think what it comes down to is I look for kind of the other stuff. So I'm gonna look at other parts of my life that I need to have a priority, and also the work environment, because I know for me, I do my best job when I'm happy and I like the people I'm working with. So if I can find that, I can do any job. So I know that that's been really important for me in terms of the internship. So for example, like working at Georgetown and realizing, that's my first time being in DC when I was doing the internship at Georgetown, and thinking could I be in DC? Could I even be at Georgetown? Or could I work in res life? That was my first real residential life experience. And then being able to see for myself, yes, I actually really like this. And, I can find pockets of students of color that I can work with on top of what I'm doing. So that was a really good experience for me to kind of feel it out of, could I be in this environment? I know that folks in student affairs tend to move a lot. And I think it's important for me to kind of get a taste of what that environment might be like before I devote a 2 to 3 year contract to living there. So I would definitely say when it comes to my job search, already, I'm not going to be job searching for another year, but when I'm thinking of my job search, I'm definitely thinking of what population of students do I want to work in? Am I at a point where I need to be close to family again? Or is it important for me to kind of travel at this point? And for me, it's definitely important for me to continue to travel at this point, because I don't have a partner, I don't have any kids, and that's important for me to kind of see that within myself and see my individual situation and recognize that, like, what can I do right now? Right now I can travel. I can afford to travel before I have a family of my own that needs to stay in one place. So realizing that, and also because I like traveling, like I want to do that, like that'd be great. So those are big things when it comes to looking at my job search. Like it could be international, it could be not even at an institution, maybe it'll be at a nonprofit. But I think the first thing for me was realizing what population do I want to be in, what region do I want to be in, like do I want to be back in the city, and those things are really, really important for me, of recognizing that my environment plays a big role in if I can do the job well and if I'm going to be happy at that job. Because I think it's, especially for folks who are looking for jobs straight out of graduate programs, there's a pressure, again, that pressure to have a sexy story, after you graduate. Like, oh, do you have a job? You better, do you have a job even before you graduated? And I think there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And I think I've done that. I've been around that already, and I'm not going to succumb to that again. And I think it's important for folks to remember, run your own race. And, you find the job that's going to be right for not just your career, but the rest of your life. Like, what is going on with your life that you like, do you need to be back in a city again? And I know for me, I'm going to need to be back in a city again. Like, Vermont is beautiful, and, the nature is great, but I need to be back in the city. So that plays a role in my job search as well. And I forgot your second question.
I did too. I'm just following you, and well, I guess I was talking about, well, like, how are you going to? Well, you did answer it, because you talked about you want to go for something that feels. It's not a specific department. Are you able to work with the people you want to work with? Does it feel, right for you? So yeah, you did answer it. It was great. It's interesting because I'm here, and this is going to actually be on another show, because I'm going to interview some people who have their own show. And I'm here, I'm listening to you, and even though I'm supposed to be interviewing you, it's kind of like I'm watching you on TV, and so I'm just sitting back, just like, oh, this is good stuff. I'm just sitting here, like getting caught up in it. And then when you say that, oh, and then I got interview mode.
I get lost in it. I'm like, oh, there's just so much I want to share.
It's awesome. See, we can have you back on another show, but before we go, last question here. What advice, if you had to sum up your stuff in this neat little nugget of information for people who are saying, okay, what's the bottom line? I'm looking at grad school. What do I need to know? What do I need to prepare for? What do you have to say to them?
I would say, and for anybody?
For anyone.
Okay. I would say, check to see how many faculty they have in the program. That's going to be, overall, I think it's different for everybody, different for what program you want to go to and everything. But if I were to say for most folks going into any kind of education-related program, look at how many faculty are teaching in that program you want to be in, because that's going to be really important of recognizing the range of experiences and curriculum that you're going to get. And it's also a little reflective of what the emphasis might be in terms of what you're taught. So if there's one full-time person in the program, and that might look into that. Check into why. See if the program is getting funded in a way that's abundant, and it's going to allow you to have a really, resourceful experience. So I would say definitely look at how many faculty you're teaching in that program.
Awesome, awesome. This is this has been a treat for me. Uh, because I enjoy doing these podcasts. I really do, and I enjoy the dialogue with people. I enjoy the conversation, and today has been, very rewarding for me. Not only on an intellectual level, but others because of what you sort of talked about the essence and everything, because that's sort of how I work myself, and me and a colleague. He's a great individual, very strong, knows his stuff, and he and I have these conversations like I don't work like that. Like I work from another level. Like I like to feel my things. Like I tell them, I do prepare for my presentations with teachers, but I don't have a plan, so to speak. Like I know I'm going to talk about X, Y, and Z, but I don't script it out because I get there, they may need something else. They may ask questions that may not even come in this script. So I like to kind of just really feel the moment and be able to go with it, and wherever it goes, it goes. So this has again been an awesome experience, and I thank you for being a guest. Viewers out there, watch this show. Check it out. It's going to be amazing. Okay. All right. So thank you again, Trina, for being a guest on the Dr. Will Show.
Dr. Will, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Awesome, awesome.